What brought you to France?
You can start.
In 2011, we had wanted to do a European vacation. And I had come to France when I was in high school. And so frankly, the easy thing was to somewhat recreate that. We went to Paris for a few days, and then to Normandy and the Loire, and we had a friend who was living in Burgundy, so we visited him as well. And we were just here for 2 weeks, and we realized that wasn't nearly enough. So in subsequent years, it was every other year we would come, and then soon it was every year, and we found ourselves here more and more often.
Mm-hmm.
And did you ever think that you would one day buy and renovate your own house here?
We started dreaming about that, but at first we didn't think that we could actually do it. That it would, we could make that become real.
Yeah. And it seemed, we when we would see things on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, it was a grand chateau, and it's like, well, wouldn't that be fun? But of course, it was millions of dollars, and that was outside the budget. And eventually, we've started to see properties that were much more affordable for us, and so we started actually looking into it and looking at websites, and we started to actually get specific about the idea, and it moved from a fantasy really into something that we could do, and we started to plan for it, and actually were able to do it then.
What was your first impression of the property?
Well, it was pretty crazy, but the staircase is what caught my attention right off the bat.
Yeah.
And then we saw this property after looking at a number of properties, and so I could see how this could be changed. I could see the potential.
Yeah, and there were certain elements like the fireplace and the tiles, the tomate, that we could see that were strong elements that we would want to keep. There was a lot that was hidden, of course. The beautiful stones were hidden behind plaster and, let's just call it, old wallpaper. And obviously there were things that I don't have a great imagination when it comes to these things, and so it was harder for me. But I think the first impression was beautiful high ceilings, a beautiful structure with a lot of good elements that could be exploited, very nicely. And then first impressions when we actually arrived were, wow, what a transformation it's been.
That's the question, is it what you were looking for?
Right.
Yes, I mean.
Yes and no. In some ways, yes, in terms of it being in a smaller town with easy access to restaurants and bakeries and pharmacy, that we had a little checklist that, we would look at a town, and if it didn't have at least a couple of options for bakeries and a pharmacy and, a couple of restaurants, then, move on. But when we had been looking, and I looked at thousands of houses online, if it was a renovation, I just ignored it and moved on and never even considered it, because we didn't want to undertake that ourselves.
What inspired you to take on a renovation?
Well, we saw Richard's house and what had been done there, and the work that had been done there, the gîte that it was on his property, and it had the kind of look that I wanted, keeping old elements, but yet having a fresh new kitchen and updated bathrooms, and that's exactly what I was looking for.
And I would add to that, we had worked with French Connections, with Richard directly, on helping us to find a house, and we looked at the several that we looked at were thanks to their help. But we've become very comfortable with the company and with Richard, and there was a lot of trust that this was going to work out. The reason we hadn't wanted to do renovations before is, while we speak a bit of French, we don't speak plumber French, as I always say, and I don't know what most of the terms are in English, much less in French. But we had confidence that the French Connections would really be able to do the job for us, and be able to do it, as you were saying, really to the standard that we were looking for. And then we decided to just make the leap.
So, how did you hear about French Connections?
I think you founded the company first, didn't you?
We had found another organization that we had considered to help us with looking for a house, but they were very expensive. we'd say, keep looking. And we ended up, it was a magazine, I want to say it was French Property News or some such. And there was an ad, and we decided to reach out by email, and the response was very quick. And we had an initial call, and one thing led to another.
What did you love about the house when you first saw it?
We walked in and it just, like I said, it had everything that I wanted. All the old elements that were kept that we really liked, but it looked beautiful. And everything, like I said, everything was fresh and new, but yet retaining the charm and the uniqueness of the house that was here originally.
And honestly, while a lot of the elements were simply exposed or cleaned or whatever, the degree of sort of fit and finish of everything, with everything new in the bathrooms, everything new in the kitchen, was very impressive. And just the quality of workmanship was, on top of the great building to start with, really was spectacular.
Yeah.
So what were the elements that you were keen to keep?
Definitely the spiral staircase, number one. And then in the salon, the beautiful high ceilings and the ceiling rose, the fireplace and all of the surrounds built in there.
We actually didn't know what the stones looked like. They were covered with plaster and too much wallpaper. And once we were able to expose those, we definitely wanted to have those be a central feature on all three levels. Upstairs in my office, we wanted to keep it as sort of rustic as possible, a bit of an industrial look. And so there's one wall that we really didn't want to touch. There's some numbers that are written there. We don't know why they're there, but they're a lovely original feature. Having exposed then the stone chimneys, or excuse me, the brick chimneys, was something else that became very attractive to us. And the general mandate was, if it's functional and not broken, not damaged, we want to keep it. So floors, doors, are all as original as possible. On the top level, in fact, the floor wasn't salvageable, so we have a new floor, and it's much better than one with holes. So we're happy about that.
What is your favorite room in the house for each of you? So, and do you have a favorite architectural feature that you love? I think we know.
Let you start.
The salon, the main living room is, I think, my favorite room. I love the touch of old wallpaper. Just keeping a part of it was really turned out very nicely, instead of, used to be everywhere, but but just what's there is lovely, and it blends very well with the paint color and the fireplace feature. So I just really enjoy sitting in this room, and when the weather's nice, having the windows open and hearing the town go by.
And this is perhaps my favorite room as well, but I also really, I don't like to spend too much time in my office, but I do enjoy being upstairs in the office and just the history that's there, and and the look, and it's wonderful to be here. And every once in a while, it's really kind of overwhelming, how much we love the house and how much we love it here, and how just how much we really appreciate all these features. And for me, it's the stones. I mean, that's if they hadn't been as nice as they are, we still would have moved forward with the project. But
it was an extra bonus.
It was an extra bonus. And I remember asking Richard, it's like, what's behind the wallpaper? And he said, I think it's the stones from the front of the house. And it's amazing that there would be stones that are, half a meter thick, and then that they would be as beautiful as they are. And so we feel very, very grateful for that.
Great. So what were your priorities or your must-haves when you were planning renovation with Richard?
Just that we could, in those areas of the house that needed new features, kitchen, bathrooms, those kinds of things, that they would be clean and fresh and look good when we entered, and they did.
And integrate well with the old features,
Yeah.
you know, that we wanted to keep a lot of as well.
Perfect. How did the renovation work long distance? Was there regular communications between you and your team at French Connections?
Yes, we had regular telephone calls, Zoom calls. We felt very well informed.
It was, there were a lot of photos traded back and forth, and decorating ideas. Questions would come with a picture, and you know, what do you think about this? And that was extremely helpful. The video calls were helpful to sort of get a more complete update. But honestly, the process, I've told many people, because a lot of people that we talk to just can't even imagine that this is possible, and somehow we're, you know, have a secret trust fund that we're working off of or something. And honestly, it was really amazingly easy, amazingly affordable, and really just something that, you know, honestly, if you want to live in France, I would absolutely recommend it.
It was fun waking up in the morning and having a set of photos on my phone with 3 different chandeliers, and which one do you like? So that was very fun.
What would you say then to anybody else who is perhaps thinking of doing the same thing?
That you can do it. It's possible.
Really, so many people have said, we have some very good friends who are like, I thought only movie stars had a house in the south of France. It's like, you could do this if you wanted to, and they probably, you know, they're not the kind of people who necessarily would, but if you really are interested in having a house in France, even if it's a part-time, you know, vacation home kind of thing, there are many places where we live in Minnesota in the U.S. where we would have paid a lot more money for a smaller place, and as a vacation home. And the fact is, it's actually very doable, and especially doing a renovation, you can make it to be exactly what you want. The process was easy. And really just the assurance that there was somebody very knowledgeable working on our behalf was extremely helpful. We felt very confident about the financial portion of it, and that would be a good, a good outcome. And in fact, it was. So we have actually already told many people how easy it is to do, and how really it's quite possible.
Great. And now that you're proud house owners, are you tempted to one day move permanently to France?
We're starting to think about that.
Yes, and investigate that
plan.
a bit. We will be leaving from our first 3 months here shortly, and we're not looking forward to the leaving, that's for sure. So we have already started looking into that as a possibility.
How can you sum up the role of that French Connections HCB played in your adventure?
I don't think we could have done it without them. So
No.
Central.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it was a fun process, and I felt like we were partners, and we were able to express our needs and our wants, and they made it happen.
Agreed. Yeah.
Great. And final question, would you recommend us?
Absolutely.
And already have.
There we go. Great, guys.